Hello and welcome to The Prodigal Life. I'm Deacon Harold Burke Sivers and joined by Nick and Ellen.
Hey, everyone.
And we are here to help you make a deeper connection between your faith and your everyday lived experience.
What are we talking about today?
We're going to do Marian Apparitions, which they're private revelations, so you don't have to necessarily believe them. But for a lot of people and millions of people throughout the centuries, they have made an indelible mark in their faith journeys. So we're going to talk about our favorites, and we're going to tell you a little bit about them. But first, as usual, we're going to get a little theological background from Deacon as to where they come from and what we're required to or not required to do as Catholics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing about Marian Apparitions is that when you think about it, the way I like to think about it is like a family, right? So Mary is the mother of Jesus, right? Jesus is our brother. Mary is the archetype of the church, right? Mother of the church. So she, in a sense, she's our mother as well. And, sometimes mom got to tell you stuff. Sometimes the children get a little bit wayward and mom's got to step in, So that's why I like to think about these Marian apparitions where Mary's coming in and everything she does is bringing us closer to Jesus.
Yeah.
So when she does appear, and she usually appears to children, not all the time, but usually mostly females and mostly teenagers or younger, children she'll appear to. Obviously, she in Guadalupe, she appeared to St. Juan Diego, and Fatima. There was also the boy that was there that was part of the apparition as well. But mostly she appears to young women, and she has a message usually about reparation, praying for sinners, everything to bring people closer to her son. And so as you mentioned, Ellen, these are private revelations. Public revelation as far as the deposit of faith ended with the death of the last apostle, right?
St. John.
So St. John. So even though when Mary's appeared and they're approved by the church, doesn't mean that we are required to believe them,
right?
As an article of faith, So, but I think a lot of them could be helpful now. So there's apparitions that have been approved by the church and those that haven't been approved by the church. So the ones that are approved by the church are approved in two different ways. They're mostly approved by a local bishop, and some, about 14 of them, are approved by the Vatican itself.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk about two of my favorites, which I didn't know a lot about until I went to France a couple of months ago.
Right.
And so when we talk about approved apparitions, Fatima, Lourdes, Guadalupe, all the ones that people know, those are either approved by the local bishop or by the Vatican itself. Again, not required for belief, but I think they're very helpful. I think Mary's messages there are beautiful.
So once they're approved by the bishop, even if it's 600 years ago or whatever, it doesn't ever have to be reapproved by another bishop. That bishop is the authority for the time when it happened. Now,
So he's the one that so he has a group of people that help examine everything that's going on. He takes a really good look at it, and then he'll ask for approval, or he'll say grant approval. Now, like one of the most recent ones is right here in the United States. It's Wisconsin. Yeah, where the Blessed Mother
Our Lady
appeared.
of Good Help.
Yeah, Our Lady of Good Help. So now there's a shrine there built, and the apparition is a powerful
place. Champion, Wisconsin.
Yeah. So there's even one here in the United States now.
So why then does it go from the bishop to only, like you said, only 14 to the Vatican? Why wouldn't they all be Vatican approved, or what's the difference there? You know what I mean?
So sometimes the bishop isn't sure and needs more help, so then he'll go to the Vatican.
Okay.
And then the Vatican will kind of take over the review and
it takes years. I mean, this isn't like an overnight thing.
Right. Yeah, these take a long time because think about it. I mean, someone says Mary appeared to me, and like, okay, Yeah, I mean, because if they don't do due diligence, if they don't take the time and really step back, and there's certain characteristics of Marian apparitions, and so, the church has to take a good look at it because you don't want people to be led astray. And the devil does use
yes, he does.
to fool people, to lure people away. So the church has to be very careful. And sometimes it takes a long time before something is approved because the church has to make sure that it's actually, it is really Mary, that this is from heaven.
But there really isn't a timeline per se, because like you said, when we were in France on pilgrimage, just this past June, we went to Our Lady of Low, which is spelled Laus. So, which I always say Lao, but it's Our Lady of Low. And that apparition, Mary appeared for 53 years, which I think that's the longest.
That's the longest.
It's the longest, but it was a fully approved by the bishop, and it's fully
by the Vatican.
By
That's
the
one of those
Vatican.
by the
Actually, it's a Vatican approved apparition for 53 years. So I there's not really a timeline on Marian apparitions. I mean, sometimes it's just one.
That's correct.
And other times it can be as long as 53
Like La
years. La Salette was one and done.
One time, yeah.
Yep, one and done. So because she spoke her piece then. So it's kind of interesting.
As a Cuban American, I grew up with devotion on the part of a lot of my family members to La Virgen de la Caridad. And she is an instance where Mary appeared to fishermen, Cuban fishermen. And I think, I don't remember all the details of the story, but I think that she like saved them from a storm or something.
Really?
Yeah. So a lot of Cubans have a devotion to La Virgen de la Caridad.
And what does that translate to in English?
The Virgin or Our Lady of Charity.
Our Lady of Charity.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
See? Yeah. So you said you had a couple of favorites. So what are your couple of favorites?
So obviously I like Fatima and Lourdes, but the ones that really, when we went to, like, for example, La Salette, you know, first of all, the drive to get up there was just incredible. You're literally in the clouds.
Yeah, you're definitely in the clouds.
Literally like in the clouds. It looks like it's fog, but you're actually in a cloud. And I didn't really know about that
Our Lady of La
apparition.
Salette.
And this one precedes Fatima and Lourdes.
Correct.
So this was even before that. And just to give a little background, this is a very nestled in the French Alps, way up atop a hill. There was a shepherd, brother and sister, that were working for a wealthier guy who owned all these sheep. And so that's the way they raised money for their family. They would take care of the sheep. So they were out with the sheep. Yeah. They fell asleep. And when they woke up, the sheep were gone. They're like, oh no, but the actual they looked around, the sheep were behind them. So they went after the sheep. And when they went after the sheep, they saw a lady, an apparition looked like a lady. And so they went to closer inspection. And then the lady came down, walked down to, and you remember the statues that showed the different places she were. And then she had a conversation with them. And then she went up to the top of the hill, and then
she descended into the clouds.
Ascended into the clouds. So it's like, what? How come I never heard of this one before? You know, it's not a very popular one, and it's a one-time one, but
they separated the children immediately.
Yes,
and the stories were identical. Identical. That's why the bishop gave approval, because that one was approved fairly quickly comparative to some of the other ones, I believe.
Yeah, it still took a while, but again, children make up things.
But the,
you know what I'm saying?
But the statue there where she's weeping.
Yeah.
She literally, Our Lady is weeping, and she has her head bowed down, and she's cradling her head in her hands, and she's weeping, and that's how the children saw Our Lady.
Yeah, that's one of the few ones where she actually was crying.
She was crying.
You know,
yes.
You know, and so I think that's the one that hit me. Not knowing about that and learning about it was her tears.
Yeah.
You know, and when you think about when moms cry, right? They cry when their children are in pain.
Yeah.
They cry when their children are hurting. Yeah. They cry when they can't provide something for their children. You know, I mean, you know, and so I think that I was thinking about a mother's love for her children, and that I think that really struck me. And we had the Filipino priest that did a phenomenal
presentation
about the apparition and its meaning. He had a great sense of humor too.
And you can go on retreat there. Like if you can't go on pilgrimage, they actually have retreats there where you can go to La Salette and just spend time in the French Alps. And they have trails that you can hike. And I mean, it's a powerful experience.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And remember, that priest was part of an order of La Salette, like a La Salette priest. I didn't even know there were priests.
I didn't either.
An order of priests based on this apparition.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, wow. So they brought him from the Philippines to France, and now he had learned French, and his French was actually really, really good.
And there were hundreds of people there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and priests everywhere. And there were seminarians there from the Philippines also. It was really funny because we had some pilgrims with us, and they actually saw the seminarians, and they donated to them, you know what I mean, to help them on their studies while they were there. It was really beautiful. Yeah. It was very beautiful. What about you? Which ones are you drawn to?
My wife and I have always felt a really strong connection to Our Lady of Fatima. And I was able to do a pilgrimage there. And it's just the whole story has just always evoked a connection for me. I don't know. I can't even tell you why, because I love Jacinta, Francisco, and Lucia. We actually named one of our daughters after Lucia.
Yeah.
So her name is Lucia. And no, but I love the story. I've been there. To be in the bedroom of these children and to see where they were when this all happened. I love like you were talking about earlier, Deacon, how so often Mary appears to the most innocent, really, and I just love the innocence of these children in Fatima. And when you're there, you're really able to take in like the simplicity of life that they had and how that predisposed them to, like, I think about my own kids, the constant battle there is now with technology and how life is so much more complex now and overly stimulating now for children. Yeah. And I think about the beauty of the way that these kids would pray together, even if they did do like the rushed version of the rosary.
Hail Mary, full of grace.
Yeah, that's it, right? Like, even though it was that, they were still praying. And like, that was their life. They were tending to sheep and they were praying and then playing, and I just think that's so beautiful, and how, in the midst of that simplicity and that innocence, an angel appears to them, and then Mary appears to them. And
it's
like,
beautiful.
It just makes me long for simplicity and innocence for me. Like, I want my life to be simple. I want my being to be innocent. And I think that we can reclaim a lot of that. Even for, in my example, like, I've just been on such a rocky, tumultuous spiritual road, but God has brought me to this place where there's been so much healing, and I know that I can reclaim a lot of that innocence, and I feel like it's happening gradually, But I don't know. I love Fatima. I love the messages of Fatima. I love the children.
And the miracle.
Yeah. Yeah, the fact that a miracle took place that was observed by
70,000 people. And they have video of it.
Right.
Because it was in 1917, so it was like the very early video.
And that it was not only like a visual thing that you might be able to explain away, but that it was something tactile that they were being rained on and stormed on.
Covered in mud.
And then totally dry.
Yep. No mud.
Later.
Totally dry.
Like, you cannot explain that away as some hallucination or some like optical illusion. Like, that's something that they physically felt and experienced.
Amen.
It's just a huge testament to the reality of God, of Mary, of the apparition in general. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
what about
crazy.
for you, Ellen?
Oh, it's weird. Being Irish Catholic, I always had an affection for Our Lady of Knock. And Our Lady of Knock is different. I got to go to Ireland this May and actually go there. And although I'm not a huge fan of like the structure of the church and all the other stuff, when you actually get to where the apparition site happened, it's very, very powerful. And it's one of the apparitions where she didn't speak. They just appeared. But the power of it is the way that they appeared. I mean, because you had Our Lady there, and she was just, brilliant white and glowing. And then she brought St. Joseph with her, and she brought St. John with her. But instead of having like an apparition of Jesus as we see him, as we replicate him today, he was there on the altar as a lamb.
Wow.
And you just are like, that's how, she brought, her son to us with this beautiful altar and crucifix and this lamb, this vulnerable, innocent, like lambs to the slaughter. And of course, that's what she was telling us. I mean, the lamb was alive on the altar, but still, it was just kind of like, he did this, for you. This is my son. I gave you my son. I gave you this innocent, beautiful lamb, and listen to him. And every time, I grew up with a statue of Our Lady of Knock. It was always a very important part of my Irish culture because we're very Irish. And I always thought about it. I used to always wonder, I'm like, wonder why she brought St. John. And to me, based on what you just said, Deacon, I finally think I connected the dot as to maybe why she brought St. John, because he was the end of what public revelation. She didn't have to speak. She spoke. There was her husband, you know what I mean? The favored, you know what I mean? The favorite, I guess I would call St. John the favorite of Jesus, you know what I mean? You know, his beloved. And then there was our Lord as a lamb. And I was like, it's just beautiful. I mean, it's just this beautiful, silent, and they were there for a while. It wasn't like it was just a flash in the pan. Mm-hmm. They were glowing. It was on the back of the church. And so when you go to knock, you get to see they have the big new chapel, you know what I mean? But you have the old chapel, and they actually have them, statues of them exactly where they were standing inside this chapel where you can go in to pray. Wow. And it's just a very, very powerful, you know, it's funny. Sometimes you can say a lot without words. And that I think is probably one of the things I like the most about Our Lady of Knock is that she said everything she had to say by just visually placing the people in the way they needed to. St. Joseph was a little bit behind her. St. John, you know what I mean, was to her left. And then our Lord was on the altar where they were, you know, all three of them were observing him on the altar as the lamb. Yeah.
You know, and another one for me is you mentioned Notre Dame de Lau, you know, which means lake in French. But just to explain people that one, because that was one I never really heard of either.
Our Lady of Lau.
And it was one of those things that we were heading toward Lourdes, and it was like, oh, so the tour guide said, oh, I got this place, you know, it's not on the schedule, but love to stop here. And yeah, let's do it. It was awesome.
It was amazing.
It was awesome.
Powerful.
And this is an apparition where, again, appearing to a 17-year-old shepherd girl, desperately poor. Blessed Mother appears her. So the girl, innocent, the beautiful innocence you talked about, Nick, she had a piece of stale bread, hard bread. She's like, tried to share it with her. Didn't know who this person was, but wanted to share it with her. And Mary smiled, thought that was it, didn't say anything. Then she kept coming back for months, appearing to this girl.
53 years.
So, yeah. And so, but what was interesting, how she got to where Mary appeared, it was another saint, Saint Maurice, who is a martyr, was a saint of that area of Notre Dame de Lau, very popular saint in that area, appeared to her when she had the sheep and said, move your sheep away from here or else these marauders are going to come and take the sheep from you. Go down here and you'll see the Mother of God. So that's how she got to the place where she met Mary. She met Mary the first time. So she met Mary, and then Mary kept coming back and appearing to her. And Mary took her to a spot that was in ruins, this chapel in ruins. Mary said, here, I want you to build this, have a chapel built dedicated to my son. And then the oil from the sanctuary lamp will bring healing to everyone who, who believes in my intercession, through to my son. And so that oil is still flowing to this day. And remember Father Alar, Chris Alar, who's a Marian priest, was anointing people with that oil.
Yep, on the altar.
Yeah, on the altar. So it was like, what?
It's beautiful.
That's amazing.
And that's just, again, a lot of people don't know about that one. I didn't really hear about till we were there. It was just like, wow.
Yep.
And I think it's beautiful. And again, our Protestant brothers and sisters struggle with the idea of Mary, and I mean, nonetheless, she's appearing, and she appeared in Japan.
Yep.
Right. She appeared in Cabejo, right?
Yep. In Africa.
Immaculate Ilibagiza talks about a lot about Our Lady of Cabejo appearing there. So Mary's appeared, I think, in almost every continent in the world. And she, again, the apparitions that are approved, the apparitions that are not approved. So there's some like Medjugorje, right, which is a huge one. That because it's not approved doesn't mean that people can't go there.
Right.
But they have to go there understanding that this is not one of the ones like Fatima, Lourdes, or Guadalupe, the other ones that are approved by the church. So the church hasn't made a definitive conclusion one way or another what's
Right.
going on there.
But they are allowing pilgrimage.
But they're allowing people to go there on
because some
pilgrimage,
people
so.
have been really affected by
So speaking
Medjugorje.
of the fruits, I was going to say it's really interesting also to look at the fruits of what has come as a result of a lot of these apparitions.
Yeah.
And one thing that comes to mind right away is, Our Lady of Guadalupe came at a time soon after the Protestant Reformation where we saw, and I don't remember the exact numbers, it was some number of hundreds of thousands of people who left the Catholic faith to become Protestant as a result of the Protestant Reformation. And then Our Lady of Guadalupe, on the heels of that, converts an almost exact same number of people to Catholicism
Right.
in
It was
Mexico.
millions. It was
and it's just
millions.
absolutely amazing that, over time, I think it was millions, but I think in that
Millions.
instance, it was like almost the exact same number of hundreds of thousands of people that left. And so it's amazing to look at, even though these are private revelation, like they happen for a reason, and it isn't just for funsies. Like they happen because it changes the course of history. It changes the course of people's lives and ultimately their eternal lives. In the example of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and now that's the patroness of the Americas.
And what's extraordinary about that is that she left a physical.
Yeah,
She left her image. She
Right?
left her image.
I mean, and when people study the image, like the ink is. I mean, first of all,
There is no ink.
That should have deteriorated.
Right.
It means what he was wearing was cheap. It was,
Yeah, it was a tilma.
tilma, cheap cloth, should have been deteriorated, and it's not. And then it looks like it's like a photograph, but like somebody drew it on there. But
it's
then
not.
it's like floating on top of the
That's
thing
right.
when they tested it.
It has a temperature.
They look in the iris, and they could see the bishop and the people standing in there. I was like, what?
Yep.
Like, wait, what?
On a tilma.
Right. It's just
There's a heartbeat. It has a heartbeat.
Believable. She's pregnant and all the symbolism with that.
Well, didn't the
It's just-
Aztecs who used to slaughter their children? They would do child sacrifice among other sacrifices, but they would do that. And when they saw the tilma, it stopped because something about the way she was standing and the way the pregnant and mother knew how to communicate with them in a way that they would know that they had to stop doing that.
wow.
And she had the facial images of the people that were
Correct.
there as well. In fact, we have a statue of Our Lady of LeBlanc from Vietnam. When she appeared there, Vietnamese features.
She always appears where you're comfortable with her.
That's beautiful because we got these like kind of like European images of like and Mary was a Palestinian Jew. So
The only time she ever left her imprint was at Guadalupe.
Yeah.
The only time and you would think if Our Lady was going to come and give a picture of herself, that probably would be pretty accurate.
Well, yeah, I mean, there she had Mayan features. I mean, because somebody looked like the people.
She's beautiful.
There. But that's the thing. Sometimes when she appears with the features of the people that are there.
Yeah.
And the other thing about the last thing about Notre Dame de Lao, she also she appeared the first time. She had the child Jesus, infant Jesus, in her arms when she appeared to the young girl. So, these are just amazing. And I think what you said was important there, Nick, about the fruits.
Right.
The fruits of these apparitions and the messages and listening, because any good child listens to their mother. And again, Mary gives us warnings.
Yes.
You're not, and she did show, scenes of hell to children at Fatima. We live in a culture they don't want to believe in hell. Hell is just a literary construct and that kind of stuff.
Or worse, it doesn't exist because God would never do that.
Right.
A loving God would never send someone to hell.
Right, and God doesn't,
But he doesn't send anybody to hell.
Yeah.
We choose hell, right?
That's substantiated, even beyond the Fatima example. Sister Faustina, Sister Faustina Kowalska, she was taken on a tour of hell by her guardian angel. And like this is a real thing.
Yeah, it is.
And I think we ought not live in fear. We ought love God but at the same time, in the words of St. Paul, work out our salvation in fear and trembling.
Amen.
Right.
But I don't live my marriage to Alina doing things that she loves in fear that she would leave me otherwise. I do things that I know that she appreciates, and I love on her as my wife because I'm meant to love my wife as Christ loved the church on the cross.
Amen.
I'm meant to die to myself completely for love of her, and I do it for love, and that's ultimately the best way to do things. Obviously, you know, the whole fire and brimstone thing, it can be effective to some extent, but again, that's not going to be a healthy marriage if you think about it as an analogous to marriage. So yeah,
and I think Mary shows those images, or saints. Padre Pio also had visions of hell too. It's like, you know, we don't want people to go here.
Yeah.
You know, tell people.
Right.
You know,
the stakes are high.
It's all about bringing people into deeper love and intimacy of Jesus.
Yeah.
So that they willingly and lovingly conform their lives to Christ and teachings of the church, so that they don't end up there by their own free will choice.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know?
Yeah, because the Lord wants us to choose him. Jesus wants us to choose him, and he wants us to be with him. So that to me is, you know, like you said, you can choose hell. And you made me think, I always think of, every time I think of a Marian apparition, the one that always comes to mind after obviously Knock is always Our Lady of Good Success in Quito, Ecuador. It's one of my very favorite. Mother Mariana. If you ever can listen, there's a beautiful talk done by Father Aurelia. He does a powerful, powerful talk about Our Lady of Good Success. Maybe we can put a link up to it. I would highly recommend listening to it. But her journey to get to Ecuador was a miracle. I mean, and there was the devil tried to prevent her from going. I mean, it was just this amazing storm at sea. It's a powerful, powerful story. But Our Lady of Good Success, Our Lady started appearing to Mother Mariana and giving her all these warnings. I mean, and they're quite lengthy, and about a lot of what we're living through right now. She predicted a lot of the stuff that happened in the 19th and 20th century. The prophecy is very, very powerful and very, very accurate. And this was done in the 1600s. It was like 1610. And she speaks to things of the 19th and 20th century. And then the thing that is the most amazing, and someday it's a bucket list item for me, is I really want to go to the convent where they are. There are 11 of these nuns. The Franciscans used to be there, and then during all the turmoil, they were kicked out of there. But there are 11 incorrupt nuns in that convent where Our Lady appeared. 11 incorrupt, and we've talked about being incorrupt before. That means that their bodies have not degraded. And it's just a very powerful, it's bishop approved. I don't know that it was never Vatican approved, but it was bishop approved. So if you don't know about Our Lady of Good Success, I highly recommend listening to the talks and learning about her.
Well, good success is always the best kind of success.
Yes. Yes. But the things she talks about, you kind of wonder, why do they call it Our Lady of Good Success? Because she's not talking about a lot of successful things, but I think it's because she hopes that by, you know, the warnings that Our Lady gave, that, you know, we would change our ways, or, you know what I mean, try and live a holier life, you know what I mean, or a life more striving for grace.
Yeah.
So I think that's the whole purpose. I mean, don't you think that's the reason why Mary why she comes to us?
Yeah, and a lot of these apparitions, you see the fruits historically, but then there's also this incredible capacity for them to bear very direct, potent fruit today. In some cases, hundreds of years later, in some whatever.
Yeah.
And one example, someone very close to me, you know, was kind of wrestling with faith and spent some time in this really small town in Italy. I can't remember what it was called, the town, but it's basically like a little, it's on the water in Italy, and it's, what do you call, not a bay, but like where it's like a body of land, and then it has like one entrance of water. Ships come in. What is that called?
Yeah, like a slip, right?
No.
Port.
It's a port town.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. And it's an old town, and this person just has always had a huge fascination with pirates and stuff. So he's in this Italian town, and he is wanting to go to Mass on Sunday, which is like not something he typically does. He passes by the church there, and it appears that he's missed all of the Mass times on that Sunday morning. So he ends up going to this gift shop, like somewhere else in the town, ends up going to the beach and then going to this gift shop. And in this gift shop, he sees these pirate coins, and he's like, oh, cool, I love pirate stuff. And so he walks up to one of the pirate coins, and it's attached to this card that has a little story on it. And then he ends up buying the coin, and on the coin, though, I think it was an image of Our Lady, but he didn't really understand what it was right away. And neither did he read the story. He just was like into the coin.
Into the coin, yeah.
Well, on his way back to his hotel, he has to walk past the church. And he hears that something's going on in the church. He pokes his head in, and they're celebrating Mass. And he's like, well, this is an unscheduled Mass. And the reason it was not on the schedule is because it was their English Mass. Everything else is in Italian. So it was not. So he ends up being able to attend an English Mass. And he goes in. He's pretty late to it, but whatever. And after receiving the Eucharist, he kneels down in his pew, and he's just enraptured. Cannot take his eyes off of this image of Our Lady that is up on a frame on the altar, near the altar. And he's just like gazing into it, and it's like gazing back at him. And he's like, he starts weeping. And lo and behold, he ends up, when he's back in his hotel room, reading the story on that card. And that image of Our Lady that's on the coin is that same image
that he was drawn to.
Even though it's like a pirate coin, like it's meant to be. And the story is that exact image of Our Lady that was on the altar there had been aboard, was stolen, plundered by pirates, along with a million other things. Oh, Siri, I'm not talking to you right now. Was plundered by pirates, amongst other things, from somewhere else. And these pirates end up getting totally caught up in this huge storm, and they're like gonna die. Oh. And the captain hears a voice tell him, throw everything over the ship, like into the ocean.
Yeah. Wow.
And so he just starts throwing everything, and he gets to the image of Our Lady that had been plundered, and it like says to him, "Throw me over."
Aww.
And so he throws it over. They end up getting washed ashore the next day or whatever, and all of the random stuff they had thrown over, the shipwreck, everything is all at the shore, and this image, totally undefiled, totally unmessed up by the ocean water, by any of it, totally in perfect condition. And he realized that it was Mary that saved them.
Wow.
And so they end up erecting this basilica, and all of those pirates converted.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And so my person that I care a lot about is reading all this, and he's like freaking out. He's like, he loves pirate stuff.
Wow.
And then he felt like Mary was like reaching out to him at that Mass, and it was that same Mary. Mm-hmm. And she was telling him when he was kneeling there, like, you're not alone. Like,
you're not alone.
Yeah. So just some of that stuff, even though that happened centuries ago, this is a very, like, within the last 12 months, like, she is still through that same.
Yeah.
So it wasn't technically an apparition, but that's a Marian miracle through that image.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And still to this day,
that's amazing.
Actively a channel of grace.
Yeah.
Just incredible.
Yeah.
And it really highlights, what we're going to get to in the next topic.
Right.
The value of pilgrimage.
Yeah.
Like he had to be there.
Right.
And he didn't even, in his case, he didn't even realize why he was there.
Yeah. It's amazing. Isn't that great?
Awesome. That's
it's amazing.
beautiful.
One little quick one before we go, because nobody knew about this when we were on pilgrimage in France, Our Lady of Sunday. And down in the south of France, there is a beautiful shrine to Our Lady of Sunday. And basically, she appeared to a farmer who was going out to work on a Sunday and told him not to work on Sundays, in a little more forceful terms than that.
Wow.
And it's bishop approved, and it's called Our Lady of Sunday. So if you want to look up, I guess what I would recommend for the, our audience and the people is just, it's nice to know about the big and the popular ones, but look for the little ones, look for Trefontaine, look for, Our Lady of Barang, look for there's so many beautiful Marian apparitions. And like Deacon said, they're private revelation. You don't have to believe them, whatever. But if you can find inspiration or help another person, you never know. Because Our Lady, that's why she does it. She does it to help us, right, Deacon?
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Yes. All righty. So thank you for joining us on the fun topic of Marian apparitions. Please try and follow us on the awakenapp.io. It's being redone, so probably by the time this launches, you're going to have a brand new, beautiful app that you'll be able to get to. You can go to your Apple Store or your Google Play Store and download it, and you can participate. There's music and podcasts and all kinds of great content for you to do. And then Deacon's going to tell you how you can support us because this costs money.
Yeah, we want to invite you to support us. Go to theprodigalife.com, and on there you'll see different patronage levels based on the different levels of angels. So you can become an angel investor, if you will, in the Prodigal
I
Life.
like that. Angel investors.
That's good.
All righty, guys. God bless you all. Thank you.